Welcome back, everybody. This is Lars, and this is Lars Talks. And this video is about intelligence, or not really. It's about IQ testing because I took an IQ test last night at like 4 a.m. after a couple of beers. Probably not the best choice, but it really got me thinking, and I started thinking more about this, and then I made a really stupid promise on Twitter. And yeah, I promised to make a video about it today, and it's like 10 p.m. right now, so I kind of have to do it now, which is, of course, good. I promised this as well. Yeah, so IQ is simply speaking a way of measuring intelligence, but it's more specific than that because it mainly measures your ability for, or your affinity really, for abstract thinking. Verbal skills, social skills, all of that stuff, no, it doesn't matter much. The verbal skills kind of, because you have to understand some of the stuff, but as long as you have a basic understanding of the language the test is in, you should be fine. And the problem is with this thing is that a lot of people don't understand it because, well, an IQ of 100, what is that? An IQ of 100 is when you're basically dead center of the curve. And if you don't know what a bell curve is, or a normal distribution, that's a way to say that, well, you have a range of values, you find one arbitrary value, or a score to actually decide that this is middle, basically, this is the mean. And in the IQ system, that is 100. And then you have a certain amount, they have set up like a normal or standard deviations, that is a certain amount away from 100 has a defined percentage, basically, of the population should fall inside a certain range of the IQ system. And so the system is 100. When you have a correctly set up test, 100 should be the standard, and 68.2%, that's 34.1% on each side of 100, should fall within the normal 85 to 115 range. That is, there's nothing abnormal but by being outside that range, because 30% of the population is actually outside it. This is normal in the sense of mathematics, not the normal in sense of, brain function, or having a functional brain. So one of the problems with the IQ system is the fact that you need to be tested against your own population. And if there's one population that has a lot of education, you have a strong focus on verbal and logic skills from early on. But another country, like an undeveloped country, they would still have, on the same test but with a different result set, they will still have an average IQ of 100. So it doesn't mean anything unless you go global. And well, a lot of tests are global, but they still are kind of biased because a lot of them actually are just used on people who actually like IQ tests. So that kind of unbalances the whole thing. Of course, when you have like big systems, you can say like a national. You can take a lot of the questions from like the big national exam, general aptitude test, something like that. I don't know what kind of system you have in your country. We have something like that earlier on in school. You can use something like that to calculate IQ and just to get a feeling on how the rest of the country actually measures up against a certain amount of points. And then you can use the normal distribution again, just to say, oh, well, if you got these certain questions right, like everybody else, well, you have to be at least 100. Well, more or less, that's kind of how it works. One of the problems, like the ethical problems with IQ testing, is that it quantifies not intelligence as a lot of people think, but it quantifies the tester's actual ability for abstract thinking, as I briefly said, and logic, like raw logic, not social or emotional logic or ethical. It's not about art. It's not about anything that makes a person. It's just about how fast and how good could you actually do on a test like that. That's it. That's all of it. And it has been used actually in different countries for like a test of just they want to see if you're mentally retarded, and then they had an excuse to actually sterilize you. They did that even in Norway. They did that for a long time. I know it was very common in the US in the 20s, I think, which is a problem because the test needs to be culturally neutral. So if you had, like, say, immigrants or people from other cultures that get a test to see if they're actually fit to live as free people and get children, you can't have a test that heavily relies on them being able to understand cultural norms. And that was actually what they did. There was a lot of questions about language, about cultural norms. They did test it against a neutral subset of the American population first to get their scoring system. But most Americans will actually be able to remember certain facts from history class and stuff like that, things that these people never had the chance to attend. And when you have those kind of questions, you can't measure intelligence, you are measuring knowledge. And that's a whole different thing, because knowledge you can get. Intelligence is something you can train it, but you can't acquire it. And you can hit a certain point when it comes to intelligence, and then that's basically your cutoff. So they say that, well, 85 to 115 is the normal, I want to say normal range, and under 70 is not retarded but mentally challenged, which basically means you are subpar, but nothing really more than that. You could still live a rich, full life. You can be happy. You can have friends. You can understand a lot of things, but raw logic, mathematics, stuff like that, that's not your thing. And that's basically what that says. There are, of course, there is some correlation, of course, but, you know, that's just how it is. And the thing is, you have inside the 70 to 130 range, you have actually 97.8% of the population is within that range, which means that most people are within 70 to 130. That's why they said 70 is basically lower range. Most people are lower or over that limit, and over 130 you are called gifted. Basically, you're gifted. You have some you have something about you that basically makes you able to do a lot of things that other people can't do. But it doesn't mean that you are going to do them, of course, because there's probably a lot of people with really high IQs that are working as carpenters, or, you know, not higher education at all. They don't have any higher education. A bit of mine actually told me about a guy he knows that has an IQ of like 145, which is really, really high. He's a carpenter because he likes doing carpentry. He likes doing math puzzles and stuff in his spare time, but he didn't want to work with all that stuff. So why should he? Physicist? Nah, that doesn't sound fun. And that's the whole thing about this. It's all about ambition. And Einstein said it very nicely, because he said that his strength is not his high intelligence, his high IQ. that didn't matter much. It helped him, but what actually mattered was his ambition and his passion and curiosity, because if he didn't have that, he wouldn't be able to do anything. But if he didn't have the intelligence, it would just take much longer. But he would still have the passion and the curiosity, which would get him far. Maybe not as far, because, well, you only live once, but still. And that is very important to remember when you think about IQ, because IQ doesn't test a lot of things that are important for success. Social competence is extremely important when it comes to actually having a successful life and being happy, because at least most of us need people around you. You do need people around you, right? And high IQ won't help you with that. You could still be really lonely with a high IQ. And yeah, and of course there are a lot of tests, and they will give you a different answer because of their different subsets. You have the long test, you have the short quick test, like I did last night, which are more or less accurate within a couple of points or a couple of percentages. You know, there's a lot of different ways of measuring this, and it's weird. And there's one more thing about IQ measurement that is really weird. It's called the Flynn effect, and that is that if you score 103 when you're 20 years old, you'll score, if you don't actually train, if you just keep at it like you always did, you will, when you're 30, you will score 100. When you're 40, you will score 97. And that's more or less exact every decade. And this goes for the whole population, because the scores or the intelligence of humans it's just increasing on a global scale, also in most countries, most Western countries as well. The intelligence is increasing, even though when you look around at the world, it doesn't really look like it all the time. But it is important to know that even though you have a high IQ, a low IQ, or something in between, most important thing is ambition and curiosity, because, you know, I'm a lazy fuck. That's just how it is, of course. And I have my other disadvantages as well. I'll probably do a video about them at some point, but I don't really feel ready for that talk yet. But I've done decently well for myself up until a point, of course, but because, well, something happened. But whatever. I never really got a good education or nothing, because I got lucky. It's a lottery, and I got lucky in many regards. And I think I'm just gonna end this video by telling you the score I got. And this is after a couple of beers. It's late at night, so, but still, the scoring system was pretty simple, because I got 100%. And they said that was 134 on IQ. That was the max that test actually could give you. So, but that doesn't matter in the end. Stephen Hawking says it very, very nicely. It doesn't matter. And he's, as far as we know, he has the highest IQ in the world right now, and he doesn't care. So yeah, I hope that gives you a bit of background on IQ testing, how that stuff works. It's just a lot of questions, and then they measure you up against everybody else or a certain subgroup, and that's it really. And this got long and ranty, but I kind of wanted to do this video because it's you should really check out Wikipedia on both intelligence testing in general and IQ testing in particular, because it is an interesting field, and it has a lot of consequences for our modern world, so you should know about it. Alright, thank you for watching this far, and I hope you'll stay around. I'll see you guys next time.